I found them on a Tuesday. Funny how the worst moments of your life arrive on the most ordinary days. I'd called in sick from my accounting job at Henderson and Associates. Genuine sick, not the fake kind. Fever of 101, sweats soaking through my shirt, the whole miserable package. I'd texted Camilla around noon saying I was heading home early, but she never responded. Typical. Our house sat quiet when I pulled into the driveway at 2 p.m. Her Mercedes was there, gleaming silver in the autumn sun. I remember thinking it was strange she hadn't mentioned working from home. The neighborhood was silent except for Mrs. Patterson's dog barking 3 houses down. The maple trees lining our street had started turning orange, leaves scattered across perfectly manicured lawns. Everything looked normal. Everything looked fine. The front door was unlocked. I climbed the stairs slowly, each step creaking under my weight. The house smelled like Camilla's expensive candles, something vanilla and sandalwood. Our bedroom door stood half open. I heard sounds, rhythmic, unmistakable. My hand touched the doorknob, and I felt the fever sweat cold on my palms. The wood was smooth under my fingers. Everything moved in slow motion. I pushed it open. My wife was on our bed with my brother Jimmy. Not making love. That would have been too dignified. They were fucking like animals, her expensive perfume mixing with sweat and betrayal. The afternoon light cut through the blinds in stripes, illuminating their bodies. Neither noticed me at first. I stood there for 5, maybe 10 seconds, phone already recording in my shaking hand. Jimmy saw me first. His face went white, then red, then white again. Jesus Christ, he gasped, scrambling backward. His hand caught the sheets, pulling them. Camilla shrieked. Camilla grabbed for her robe, her perfectly styled blonde hair wild around her face. David! What are you? You're supposed to be at work. I texted you, I said quietly. My voice sounded strange, hollow, like it was coming from somewhere else. I'm sick. Jimmy was pulling on his pants, always the quick one, always ready with an escape route. His hands fumbled with the zipper. Listen, Dave, this isn't what? I interrupted. Isn't you fucking my wife in my bed? Because my phone says otherwise. I held it up, the red recording dot visible. Say cheese. The color drained from both their faces. Camilla's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Jimmy froze, one leg in his pants, one out. You're recording this? Camilla finally managed. I am. That's illegal. It's not, actually. Illinois is a 2-party consent state for audio recording in private conversations, but visual recording in your own home, where you have a reasonable expectation of privacy, that's different. Besides, I think a court would be very understanding about the circumstances. The fever made everything sharp and dull simultaneously. I watched Camilla's face cycle through shock, guilt, then, remarkably, irritation. Don't you dare judge me, she hissed, pulling the robe tight around her body. You've been emotionally absent for years. Years, David. When was the last time you took me anywhere? When was the last time we had a real conversation? I almost laughed. Almost. So, your solution was to fuck my brother in our bed on a Tuesday afternoon. It wasn't planned, Jimmy said, finally getting his pants on. His shirt was inside out. Dave, look, it's complicated. Seems pretty simple to me. You don't understand, Camilla said. Our marriage has been over for years. We're just acting formal. I see. I stepped back into the hallway. Well, thank you for clarifying. That makes everything so much better. David, wait! Camilla started, but I was already walking away. I heard Jimmy's car starting 5 minutes later, tires squealing as he fled like the coward he'd always been. Camilla stayed in the bedroom. I could hear her crying, then talking on the phone, probably calling her mother, or her father, or her lawyer. I didn't care. I grabbed my laptop bag, some clothes from the guest room closet, my medication. The house suddenly felt toxic, every surface contaminated. The kitchen where we'd had breakfast that morning, the living room where we'd watched television last night, the bed where I'd slept beside her for 9 years. All of it poisoned now. I drove to a motel 6 blocks away, the Budget Inn, with its flickering vacancy sign and parking lot full of road-weary travelers. The clerk was a kid, maybe 20, with acne scars and tired eyes. He didn't ask questions when I paid cash for a week. "Room 217, he said, sliding the key across the counter. "Ice machines on the 2nd floor, vending machines by the stairs." "Thanks." The room was exactly what you'd expect. Rough sheets, thin pillows, walls the color of old mustard. The air conditioner hummed and rattled. The carpet had stains I didn't want to think about, but it was mine, my space, untainted. I sat on the bed and watched the video 3 times. Each viewing burned it deeper into my memory. The sounds, the movements, my wife and my brother betraying me in the most fundamental way possible. Then I opened my laptop and got to work. Let me tell you about my brother Jimmy. James Patrick Donovan Jr., named after our father, born 3 years before me with a silver spoon already halfway down his throat. Mom used to joke that Jimmy came out smiling, ready to charm the world. She wasn't wrong. Varsity quarterback at Lincoln High, captain of the team, homecoming king. Full scholarship to Northwestern, where he majored in business and minored in being everybody's favorite guy. He'd married Stephanie Chen right after graduation. Her father owned a chain of hotels, and they had 2 perfect kids, Emma and Jake, both in expensive private schools. By 30, Jimmy was vice president of operations at Geraldson Construction, pulling down $200,000 a year plus bonuses. He drove a BMW. He belonged to a country club. His life was a highlight reel of success and privilege. Then there was me, David Patrick Donovan, the other son, the quiet one, the smart one, which was code for boring. I'd gone to state school, studied accounting because I was good with numbers, graduated with honors but no fanfare. I'd worked at Henderson and Associates for 8 years, making decent money, $75,000 a year, but nothing spectacular. I was the stable one, the reliable one, the guy who showed up, did his job, went home. No drama, no excitement, no story worth telling at parties. I'd met Camilla at Jimmy's wedding reception. She was Stephanie's college roommate, 23 years old, blonde and beautiful in a bridesmaid dress. We'd talked by the bar, discovered we both hated the DJ's music selection, ended up spending the evening together. She'd laughed at my jokes. I'd been captivated by her smile. We dated for 2 years before I proposed. Her father, Gerald Geraldson, had looked at me across his massive oak desk when I'd asked for his blessing. "You're an accountant," he'd said. Not a question, just a statement of fact. "Yes, sir." Stable profession. Boring, but stable. He'd studied me. "You'll take care of her?" Always. He'd given his blessing, though I could see the disappointment in his eyes. I wasn't the son-in-law he'd dreamed of. I was acceptable. Safe. The kind of man you approved of but never bragged about. We got married in a ceremony that cost more than my annual salary. The Geraldson family invited 300 people. I invited 20. The reception was at the country club. The honeymoon was 2 weeks in Italy, paid for by Gerald. I should have seen the signs then. Should have understood that in the Geraldson world, I was an accessory, a supporting character in Camilla's story. But I'd been in love. Stupidly, blindly in love. 9 years later, sitting in a motel room with a fever and a video of my wife fucking my brother, I finally understood the truth. I'd never been the protagonist. I'd been the joke. The fever broke on Wednesday. I woke up soaked in sweat, but clear-headed, my mind sharp in a way it hadn't been in years. Maybe it was the shock. Maybe it was clarity born from betrayal. Whatever it was, I felt different. Focused. I ordered food delivery, Chinese from a place down the street, and spread my laptop and notebooks across the motel room's small desk. The room smelled like disinfectant and old cigarettes, but I barely noticed. First, I needed to understand my situation legally and financially. I opened a new bank account at a different bank than the one Camilla and I shared. Then I transferred exactly half of our joint savings, $38,412. It was my legal right. Illinois was an equitable distribution state, and I was entitled to half of all marital assets. Camilla had more money in her trust fund, inherited from her grandfather. That was separate property, untouchable in a divorce. But our joint assets? Fair game. Next, I documented everything. The video, obviously. But also, bank statements showing I'd been the primary earner throughout our marriage. Credit card statements showing Camilla's expensive tastes, designer clothes, spa days, country club fees, emails and text messages I'd backed up over the years. I was thorough. Accountants always are. My phone buzzed. Camilla calling. I declined. She called again, declined. Then came the texts. We need to talk. You can't just leave. This is childish. My lawyer says what you did is illegal. Please call me. I turned the phone off. The Chinese food arrived, beef and broccoli, egg rolls, fried rice. I ate mechanically, fueling my body while my mind worked through scenarios and possibilities. A divorce would be messy, but straightforward. With my documentation, I'd get a fair settlement, maybe better than fair. Camilla would lose the house. I'd inherited it from my grandmother, so it was separate property. She'd keep her trust fund. We'd split everything else. But that wasn't enough. Not nearly enough. Camilla hadn't just cheated. She'd been careless about it, dismissive of any possibility that I'd discover or care. She'd brought my brother into our home, into our bed on a Tuesday afternoon like it was nothing, like I was nothing, and Jimmy. Golden boy Jimmy, who'd always had everything handed to him, who'd probably slept with my wife just because he could, because he was Jimmy Donovan, and Jimmy Donovan took what he wanted. They'd humiliated me. They'd treated me like I was invisible. I wanted them to understand what that felt like. I pulled up Geraldson Construction's website on my laptop, the company Gerald had built from nothing over 40 years. Mid-sized regional contractor, specializing in commercial and municipal projects. Annual revenue around $80 million, solid reputation, good bonding capacity, and Jimmy was vice president of operations. I sat back, thinking. An idea was forming, still vague but taking shape. Something cold and calculated and patient. Something that would require time and help and perfect execution. Something that would destroy everything they valued. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts. Found the name I was looking for. Rebecca Ortiz. We'd worked together at my previous firm, Hoffman & Associates, 5 years ago. She'd been a tax specialist then, sharp as a blade, always 3 steps ahead of everyone else. We'd gotten along well, 2 number crunchers who understood the poetry of financial statements. Rebecca had moved on to corporate law, specializing in mergers and acquisitions. We'd kept in touch, professional drinks twice a year, occasional emails. She was a partner now at Wilson Gray, one of Chicago's top firms, and she owed me a favor. 3 years ago, her firm had been audited by the IRS. Rebecca had made some aggressive deductions on behalf of a client, completely legal but borderline. The auditor had been suspicious, digging deep. Rebecca had been worried, professionally exposed. I'd reviewed her documentation, found the supporting evidence she'd overlooked, and structured a defense that satisfied the auditor. The audit had closed in her favor. Her client was happy. Her partnership track was secure. She'd told me if I ever needed anything at all, I should call. I was calling. The phone rang 4 times. Then her voice, professional and measured. Rebecca Ortiz. Rebecca, it's David Donovan. A pause. David? It's been 6 months? How are you? I've been better. I kept my voice level. I need your help. Legal help. And your discretion. Another pause. Longer this time. This sounds serious. It is. Are you in trouble? No, but I'm about to cause some. She was quiet for a moment. I could almost hear her calculating, weighing her response. Where are you? Budget Inn on Western Avenue, room 217. Give me an hour. She hung up. I used the hour to shower and change clothes to make sure the room looked less like a crime scene and more like a temporary workspace. I organized my documents, made sure everything was ready to present. Rebecca arrived exactly 60 minutes later. She knocked 3 times, quick and businesslike. I opened the door. She looked the same as always. Dark hair pulled back in a professional knot, sharp eyes behind designer glasses, power suit that probably cost more than my weekly salary. But her expression was concerned. "You look terrible," she said, walking past me into the room. "My wife is sleeping with my brother." Rebecca set her briefcase down on the desk, turned to face me. "I see. I found them yesterday, in our bed. I have video. And you want a divorce. I want more than that." I gestured to the desk, the documents I'd prepared. "I want to destroy her family's company and make sure my brother loses everything. The divorce is just the beginning." Rebecca studied me for a long moment. Her face was unreadable. "That's ambitious. Is it possible?" "Maybe." She moved to the desk, started looking through my documents. "Tell me about Geraldson Construction." I told her everything I knew, the company's size and structure, the major projects they were running, Jimmy's position as vice president of operations, Gerald's age and upcoming retirement plans, the family dynamics, the board composition, the financial position. Rebecca listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes on her phone. When I finished, she was quiet for a minute, processing. "Geraldson Construction is privately held," she finally said. "Gerald owns 60%, his wife Martha owns 10%, Camilla owns 20%, inherited from her grandfather, and the remaining 10% is split among key employees. Jimmy probably has a small stake too." "That sounds right." "They run 3 or 4 major projects at a time, all bonded through a major insurance company. Their reputation is solid. They've been in business 40 years. She looked up from her phone. "Why do you think they're vulnerable?" "Every company is vulnerable if you know where to push." "True. But you need leverage, information, inside access." She paused. "Do you have that?" "Camilla brings work home. Financial reports, project updates, board meeting minutes. She's careless with them, leaves them all over her home office." "Does she know you've seen them?" "She thinks I'm too boring to care about her work." Rebecca smiled, not a nice expression. "Then she's underestimated you." "Everyone does. Do you still have access to the house?" "It's my house. I inherited it from my grandmother before we got married. Legally, she's the guest." "Good. That gives us options." Rebecca sat down on the edge of the bed, thinking. "Corporate destruction is complicated, David. It takes time, resources, and perfect execution. You can't just walk in and burn everything down." "I understand. And it's expensive. We'd need to involve other people, potentially investors who specialize in distressed acquisitions. They'd want something out of this. I have $38,000 in liquid assets, more if I liquidate some investments." "That's a start, but not enough." She looked at me directly. "What exactly do you want?" "What's the end game?" I'd been thinking about that for the last 24 hours. "I want the Geraldson family to lose their company. I want Gerald to watch everything he built crumble. I want Camilla's inheritance to become worthless. And I want Jimmy fired, blacklisted, unable to find work in his industry." "That's thorough." They were thorough in their disrespect. Rebecca was quiet again. I could see her mind working, considering angles and possibilities. "There's a private equity firm I've worked with, Shaw and Associates. They specialize in distressed acquisitions, finding companies in trouble, buying them cheap, restructuring and reselling for profit. Vulture capitalists. That's the polite term, but they're very good at what they do. If Geraldson Construction became distressed enough, Shaw might be interested." "How distressed are we talking?" "Cash flow problems, project failures, bank pressure, the kind of situation where Gerald would be desperate enough to accept outside investment. And once Shaw is inside, they take control, replace management, restructure operations. Usually that means selling assets and maximizing their return, destroying the company in the process. Not always. Sometimes they save companies. But in this case, she looked at me. If I brought them a detailed plan showing how to maximize their profit by dismantling Geraldson Construction, they'd listen. And you'd help me develop that plan. I'd need information. Lots of it. Financial statements, project documentation, vendor contracts, employee files, everything you can get your hands on. I can get it. It would take months, maybe a year. You'd have to play the long game. Pretend to forgive your wife, go back home, maintain appearances while you feed me information. I can do that. Rebecca studied me. This isn't who you are, David. You're a good guy, reliable, honest, by the book. What you're describing is calculated corporate warfare. Maybe that's not who I was, I said, but it's who I am now. She was quiet for a moment longer. Then she pulled a business card from her briefcase, wrote a number on the back. This is my private line. Call me when you have documents. And David, once we start this, we can't stop halfway. You commit all the way or not at all. I'm committed. Then we have a deal. She stood, picked up her briefcase. One more thing. Why are you doing this? Really? Is it just revenge? I thought about that. Have you ever been invisible? What? Invisible. Unimportant. The person nobody notices or remembers. The background character in everyone else's story. Sometimes. That's been my whole life. With my family, with my wife, with everyone. I'm good old David, reliable and boring and forgettable. People use me and dismiss me and never think twice. I met her eyes. I want them to see me. Just once. I want them to understand what I'm capable of. Rebecca nodded slowly. Be careful what you wish for. Once they see you, they'll never forget. Good. She left then, closing the door quietly behind her. I sat in the silent motel room, feeling something cold and hard settling into my chest where my heart used to be. I was going to war. Not with guns or fists, but with spreadsheets and leverage and patient, calculated destruction. And I was going to win. I returned home on Sunday evening. Camilla's car was in the driveway, and I could see lights on in the living room. I sat in my car for a moment, preparing myself. This was the hard part, the performance. I had to be convincing, had to make her believe I was considering forgiveness. The front door was locked. I used my key. Camilla was on the couch, glass of wine in hand, watching some reality show about Real Housewives. She looked up when I entered, her expression guarded. She'd been crying. I could see the puffiness around her eyes, the mascara smudges she'd tried to clean up. So you're back, she said quietly. I'm back. We need to talk. Do we? I dropped my bag by the stairs, kept my voice level. What would you like to talk about, Camilla? Your affair with my brother? How long it's been going on? Whether you love him? She flinched, set down her wine glass. It's been 3 months. And it's not about love. What's it about? I don't know. She stood, agitated, wrapping her arms around herself. She was wearing one of her expensive loungewear sets, the kind that cost $300 to look casual. You're never here, David. Even when you're home, you're not present. You go to your job, come home, eat dinner, watch TV, and go to bed. We don't talk. We don't do anything. That's not a marriage. So you decided to fuck Jimmy. Don't be crude. I laughed, a sound that surprised us both. It came out harsh, bitter. I'm being crude? I caught you in our bed with my brother, and I'm the problem. I made a mistake, Camilla said, but her voice lacked conviction. She was going through the motions of an apology without actually meaning it. It won't happen again. Jimmy and we've ended it. You've ended it, I repeated. When? After I caught you, or before? Does it matter? It might. She studied me, trying to read my expression. What do you want, David? Do you want to divorce me? Because my father's lawyers will destroy you. You'll get nothing. I'd been expecting this. The threat, the reminder of Gerald's power and money. I'm sure they would try, I agreed. But I have video evidence of adultery. Illinois courts tend to favor the betrayed spouse. I'd probably do okay. Her face paled. You wouldn't use that video. Why not? It's private. It's humiliating. It was humiliating for me too. Difference is, I wasn't the one who caused it. Camilla sank back onto the couch. She looked smaller suddenly, less sure of herself. What do you want? I pretended to consider. Let the silence stretch. Watched her squirm. I want to sleep on it, I finally said. Think things through. Maybe we can fix this. She looked up, surprised. Really? Maybe. I don't know. I moved toward the stairs. We've been together 9 years, Camilla. That has to count for something. Relief washed over her face. She actually believed me. I'm glad. I really am sorry, David. Jimmy and it was stupid. A moment of weakness. 3 months of moments, I corrected. But sure. Weakness. It won't happen again. We'll see. I went upstairs to the guest room. It was smaller than the master bedroom, with a full-size bed instead of a king, but it felt cleaner somehow. Untainted. I'd sleep here for now. I heard Camilla moving around downstairs, then coming up. She paused outside the guest room door. David? What? Thank you for coming back, for being willing to try. I didn't answer. After a moment, I heard her walk away to the master bedroom. Our bedroom. The room where she'd fucked my brother. I lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, thinking about what came next. The performance had begun. Now I had to maintain it. Had to be the forgiving husband, the guy willing to work through betrayal. It wouldn't be easy. Every time I looked at Camilla, I'd see her with Jimmy. Every time we had a conversation, I'd remember what she thought of me. Every moment would be a lie. But I was good at being underestimated. Good at being dismissed. I'd been playing that role my whole life. Now I'd just play it a little longer. Playing the forgiving husband was easier than I expected. Camilla wanted to believe I'd roll over, accept her apology, move on. She'd grown up wealthy, beautiful, used to getting what she wanted. In her world, consequences were for other people. Problems could be solved with money or charm, or simply ignoring them until they went away. I became the perfect supportive spouse. I asked about her day. I complimented her outfits. I picked up her favorite takeout without being asked. I initiated intimacy twice a week, mechanically and easily forgotten, but enough to maintain visibility. And I waited. Camilla's home office was on the second floor, a converted bedroom with built-in shelves and a mahogany desk that had cost more than my car. She spent hours there, reviewing documents for the family business, participating in board meetings via video conference, managing her portfolio. The door was usually unlocked. She was careless about security, always had been. Why worry about privacy in your own home? I'd installed a keylogger on her laptop months ago, standard precaution for someone in accounting. It was a small program, completely invisible, that recorded every keystroke. I knew her passwords, her email credentials, her bank account logins. I knew everything. At first, I'd done it out of idle curiosity, maybe a hint of paranoia. Now it was invaluable. I started documenting everything. When Camilla had video calls with her father and the board every Tuesday afternoon, I was conveniently working from home that day. When she reviewed project budgets every Thursday evening, I'd offer to cook dinner so she could focus. When she left documents scattered on her desk, I'd photograph them with my phone. Every piece of information went to Rebecca through encrypted email. We used a private server, completely secure. No way to trace it back to either of us. The information I provided was gold. Project budgets showing razor-thin margins, vendor contracts with problematic terms, timeline projections that were optimistic at best, delusional at worst. Internal memos about the highway project's mounting problems, equipment delays, inspection issues, supply chain complications, and all of it, every problem and vulnerability, tied back to Jimmy. He was managing the highway project, the company's largest active contract. $42 million job for the county, widening a 10-mile stretch of Route 53. It should have been straightforward. Jimmy had done similar projects before. But he was cutting corners, pushing timelines, making decisions based on ego rather than reality. I could see it in the documents. The way he'd rejected a lower bid from a more reliable subcontractor in favor of his buddy's company. The way he'd committed to completion dates without properly accounting for weather delays. The way he'd lied to the board about project status, marking things green when they were clearly yellow or red. Jimmy had always been careless, too confident, too sure that his charm would smooth over any problems. I was counting on that. I met Rebecca for coffee 3 weeks after returning home. We used a place in Lincoln Park, far from my usual haunts, where nobody would recognize either of us. She arrived at 2 p.m. on a Wednesday, wearing designer sunglasses and a Burberry coat. We sat in a corner booth, away from windows. "This is good," Rebecca said, scrolling through her tablet, reviewing the documents I'd sent. "Very good. Your brother's making mistakes. Significant ones. Can we exploit them?" "Absolutely." She pulled up a spreadsheet, turned the tablet so I could see. "Look at the highway project's cash flow projection. Jimmy's betting on a mild winter and perfect weather through spring. That's insane for Illinois. One bad snow season and they're behind schedule. Behind schedule means penalties. $10,000 a day after the end. The contract is crystal clear," Rebecca smiled. "And the end is April 15th. I looked at the calendar on my phone. October, 6 months to go. What are the chances they'll finish on time? Without problems? Maybe 60%. With complications?" She shrugged. 30%, tops. So we introduce complications. Carefully. We can't do anything illegal or obvious. But there are ways to create friction. Such as? Rebecca pulled up another document. These are Geraldson's major subcontractors on the highway project. Concrete supplier, electrical contractor, heavy equipment rental, asphalt paving. They're all small to mid-sized companies working on thin margins. And? What if one of them suddenly had cash flow problems? Maybe their bank called in a line of credit unexpectedly. Maybe they couldn't make payroll. Workers walk off the job, the project stops, delays start accumulating. You can make that happen? I have contacts at several regional banks, favors owed, professional relationships. A word in the right ear, a suggestion that maybe they should review their risk exposure with certain clients. She trailed off meaningfully. That's financial manipulation. That's business. Banks reassess risk all the time, sometimes at the suggestion of concerned parties. I studied the list of subcontractors. This electrical company, Midwestern Electric, they're small, probably operating on a tight budget. Exactly. They have a line of credit with Prairie State Bank. I know someone there. If they lose that credit line, they can't make payroll, their workers walk. The project stops. How long would that delay things? Finding a replacement electrical contractor, getting them up to speed, coordinating with the existing timeline? 4 weeks minimum, maybe 6, 4 to 6 weeks. At $10,000 per day in penalties, that was $280,000 to $420,000. A significant hit for a company Geraldson Construction's size. "Do it," I said. Rebecca nodded, making notes on her tablet. I'll need a few weeks to set it up. Make it look natural, but it'll happen. What else? She scrolled through more documents. The school project, their other major active job. They're building a new elementary school for the Riverside district. Contract is $28 million, endus June 30th. What are the problems there? None yet. It's actually running smoothly. Good project manager, reliable subcontractors, reasonable timeline. Then we create problems. Such as, I thought about it. Schools were sensitive. Public projects with lots of oversight. Hard to manipulate directly. What about the concrete supplier? Archer Concrete. Solid reputation. Been in business 30 years. Everyone has vulnerabilities. Find theirs. Rebecca made another note. I'll look into it. We spent another hour reviewing every aspect of Geraldson Construction's operations. I'd given Rebecca access to enough information that she had a complete picture. Debt obligations, bonding capacity, cash reserves, contract terms, vendor relationships. It was like doing an audit, except instead of finding problems to fix, we were finding problems to exploit. We'll need more than project delays, Rebecca finally said. To really put pressure on them, we need multiple stress points. Projects bleeding money, yes, but also bank pressure, vendor problems, maybe some reputation damage. How? I'm working on that. I've reached out to Shaw and Associates very quietly. They're interested. In what? In Geraldson Construction as a potential acquisition target. If the company becomes distressed enough, cash flow problems, project losses, bank pressure, Shaw could approach them with an investment offer. Investment, meaning takeover. Eventually. Shaw doesn't invest to be a silent partner. They invest to control. Rebecca finished her coffee. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. First, we need to create the distress. Make the company vulnerable. That takes time and patience. I have both. Good. She stood, gathering her things. I'll be in touch. Keep sending me information. And David, be careful at home. Don't give Camilla any reason to suspect. I won't. She left first, disappearing into the afternoon crowd. I sat alone for a few more minutes, finishing my coffee, thinking about what we'd set in motion. I was attacking my wife's family business using inside information and financial manipulation. Rebecca was coordinating with vulture capitalists to destroy and acquire a 40-year-old company. We were plotting to ruin my brother's career and drain my father-in-law's life's work. If someone had told me 6 months ago I'd be doing this, I would have laughed. I wasn't that kind of person. I was the boring accountant, the reliable guy, the background character. But that person had died the moment I found Camilla and Jimmy together. What remained was someone colder, more calculating, someone who understood that patience and intelligence were more dangerous than any physical weapon, someone who was going to win. The first domino fell in November. Midwestern Electric, the subcontractor handling the highway project's lighting and signals, suddenly lost their line of credit. Prairie State Bank called it in with 48 hours' notice, citing risk reassessment and portfolio rebalancing. The timing was brutal. Midwestern had just ordered $80,000 in materials and owed their workers 2 weeks of back pay. They couldn't cover it. Their workers walked off the job on a Monday morning. 43 electricians just gone. The highway project ground to a halt. I heard about it at the office first, before Camilla knew. Henderson and Associates had a client that supplied equipment to Midwestern Electric. The news traveled fast in the contracting community. Tough break for Midwestern, my colleague Jennifer mentioned at lunch, losing their credit line right in the middle of a major project. What happened? I asked, carefully casual. Who knows? Banks do that sometimes. Decide someone's too risky and pull the plug. She shook her head. They'll probably go under. Can't operate without credit. They did go under. Filed for bankruptcy protection 3 weeks later. By then, Jimmy was scrambling to find a replacement electrical contractor. but good electricians were booked months in advance, especially heading into winter. He finally found Freeman Electric out of Rockford, but they wanted premium rates and couldn't start for 2 weeks. 2 weeks of idle equipment, 2 weeks of mounting penalties, 2 weeks of the project timeline slipping further behind. The penalties started accumulating, $10,000 per day. After 2 weeks, $140,000. After a month, $300,000. I watched it happen through the documents Camilla brought home, the increasingly frantic emails between Jimmy and the project managers, the tense memos to the board. Gerald called an emergency board meeting in late November. Camilla attended via video conference from her home office. I was downstairs, supposedly watching television, but I could hear every word through the heating vents. "The highway situation is unacceptable." Gerald's voice came through, tight with anger. "We're 3 weeks behind schedule and hemorrhaging money. Jimmy, explain to me how this happened." "The subcontractor failed," Jimmy said. His voice was defensive, stressed. "Midwestern Electric went bankrupt. That's not something I could predict or control." "You chose them. They had the best bid. They had the cheapest bid," another board member interrupted. "There's a difference. Westfield Electric bid higher, but they're solid, established. But you went with Midwestern to save $40,000. Now we're losing $300,000 in penalties." "We'll make up the time in spring," Jimmy insisted. "Freeman Electric is good. Once they're up to speed, it'll be December," Gerald cut him off. "You know what happens to construction projects in Illinois winter, James. We lose another 2 months to weather, maybe 3. That puts us at March, April before we're back to full speed. The end is April 15th. Silence from Jimmy. "We're going to miss the end," Gerald continued, and his voice sounded tired suddenly, old. "The question is by how much, and how much it's going to cost us." "I can bring it in," Jimmy said, but he didn't sound confident. "You'd better. Because if this project fails, it doesn't just hurt the company, it hurts every one of us personally. Our bonding company is already asking questions. If we default on a major contract, our ability to bid on future projects evaporates." The meeting continued for another hour, but the damage was done. Jimmy's golden boy reputation was tarnishing. The highway project was bleeding money, and the stress was showing on everyone. I went upstairs after the meeting ended, found Camilla still sitting at her desk, staring at her laptop screen. "Everything okay?" I asked from the doorway. She jumped slightly. "God, you scared me." "Sorry, heard you on the call, sounded tense." "It's the highway project. It's turning into a disaster." She rubbed her face. "Jimmy's in over his head. I'm sure he'll figure it out." "I'm not." She looked at me. "He's always been like this. Overconfident. Thinks he can charm his way through anything. But you can't charm a construction end." "Your dad seems worried." "He's terrified. This company is his life's work, David. If it fails..." She trailed off. I moved into the room, put my hand on her shoulder, the supportive husband. "It won't fail. Your father's too smart for that. I hope you're right, but I knew I wasn't. The highway project was just the beginning. The Geraldson family Sunday dinners had been a tradition since before I married Camilla. Every week, without fail, the family gathered at Gerald and Martha's house in Oak Brook. Their home was a monument to success. 6,000 square feet of marble and hardwood, professionally landscaped grounds, a pool house bigger than my first apartment. I'd always felt out of place there. The poor relation. The accountant among titans of industry. The first Sunday after the highway project problems began, the tension was palpable. Gerald sat at the head of the table, 68 years old and looking every day of it. His hair had gone completely white in the years I'd known him. His face was lined, his hands spotted with age, but his eyes were still sharp, still calculating. Martha played hostess, as always, directing the catering staff, ensuring everyone's wine glass stayed full. She was 65, beautiful in that expensively maintained way. She'd been a trophy wife when Gerald was young and building his company. Now she was an institution. Camilla sat beside me, picking at her food. She'd been quiet all week, worried about the company. I played my role, the concerned husband, asking gentle questions, offering empty reassurances. And then there was Jimmy. He arrived late, which was unusual. Jimmy was always punctual, always on time with a smile and a story. But tonight he rushed in at 6:45, tie loosened, face flushed. "Sorry," he said, kissing his mother's cheek. Project meeting ran long. Stephanie followed behind him with Emma and Jake. She looked tired. The kids were subdued. The family dysfunction was starting to show. We sat down to dinner. Roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans. Martha's menu never varied. Tradition and routine, the cornerstones of Gerald's family life. "So," Gerald said after the first course was served, "Freeman Electric started this week." "Yes," Jimmy said. "They've got a full crew. 45 electricians. They're working extended hours to make up time." "At what cost?" "They're charging premium rates. Time and a half." "How premium?" Jimmy hesitated. 30% over the original budget. Gerald set down his fork. 30%. It's the winter season. Everyone charges more in winter, and they're the only contractor who could start immediately. So we're paying penalties for delays and premium rates for the replacement contractor. Brilliant management, James. Jimmy's jaw tightened. What would you have done differently? I would have chosen a reliable subcontractor in the first place. I would have built weather delays into the timeline. I would have been honest with the board about the project's actual status, instead of marking everything green when it was clearly trending yellow. I was trying to maintain confidence. You were lying, Gerald interrupted. There's a difference between optimism and dishonesty. That's not fair. Life isn't fair. Business isn't fair. Results are what matter, and right now the results are terrible. Martha tried to intervene. Perhaps we could discuss this after dinner. No, Gerald said. We'll discuss it now. Because this isn't just about one project. This is about the company's future. Our bonding company called me yesterday. They're concerned about our performance. They're considering raising our rates or reducing our bonding capacity. Silence fell over the table. Even the kids sensed the gravity of the situation. That would be a sentence, one of the other board members said. He'd been invited to dinner, Richard something, senior VP. Without adequate bonding, we can't bid on any projects over $5 million. We'd be out of the commercial market entirely. I'm aware, Gerald said, which is why we need to fix the highway project immediately. No more excuses, no more optimism. Real solutions. Jimmy stared at his plate. His face was red, whether from anger or embarrassment I couldn't tell. I ate my chicken and said nothing. The perfect, invisible son-in-law. After dinner, while the women cleared dishes and the kids played in the other room, the men retired to Gerald's study. Bourbon and cigars, a ritual I'd always found ridiculous but endured. Gerald poured drinks in heavy crystal glasses. David, you've been quiet tonight. Not my company, I said. Not my place to speak. Your family. Am I? I met his eyes. I'm the accountant who married your daughter. I don't think that makes me family in the way Jimmy is family. Gerald studied me. You've always been self-deprecating. I've never been sure if it's genuine humility or if you're smarter than you let on. Why not both? He almost smiled. Fair enough. He turned to Jimmy. What's your plan for the highway project? Freeman Electric works through December. We get as much done as possible before weather shuts us down. We'll resume play in March, push on into April. We'll miss the final, maybe in 2 weeks. The penalties will hurt, but they won't destroy us. And the school project? On track, no problems. Let's hope it stays that way. Gerald sipped his bourbon. We can't afford another disaster. But another disaster was exactly what I had planned. Rebecca moved carefully with the school project. Too careful, I thought at first. But she knew what she was doing. The school project was Geraldson Construction's showcase, a new elementary school for the Riverside District, $28 million, scheduled for completion in June. Good project manager, solid timeline, no significant problems. Rebecca's approach was elegant in its simplicity. Archer Concrete supplied all the concrete for the project: foundations, walls, floors. They'd been in business 30 years, family-owned, reliable. They'd done dozens of projects with Geraldson over the years, but they'd recently switched insurance carriers to save money. The new carrier was more aggressive about liability, more cautious about exposure. All Rebecca had to do was plant a seed. She had a contact at the insurance company, someone who owed her a favor from a previous case. She suggested, very casually, that they might want to review their quality control procedures, specifically the testing protocols for concrete batches. The insurance company did their review. They found that Archer's documentation was sloppy, not wrong, just incomplete. Test results filed late, paperwork missing signatures, that sort of thing. The insurance company panicked. They issued a bulletin requiring immediate remediation. All concrete batches supplied in the last 6 months needed additional testing. Any batches that couldn't be fully documented needed to be removed and replaced. The bulletin hit Archer Concrete in January like a bomb, and the school project, which had just poured major foundations in November and December, suddenly had a problem. I heard about it from Camilla first. She came home from the office looking shell-shocked. "The school project is in trouble," she said, dropping her briefcase on the kitchen counter. "What happened?" "Archer Concrete. Their insurance company is making them retest and potentially replace concrete from the last 6 months. That includes most of what we've poured on the school. Can't they just do the additional tests? They're trying, but some batches don't have complete documentation. The insurance company is insisting those batches need to be removed and replaced." She poured herself a large glass of wine. "Do you know what it costs to remove and replace poured foundation concrete?" "A lot. Hundreds of thousands. Maybe $1 million. And the timeline?" She stopped, overwhelmed. "Will be delayed by months. The district isn't going to accept that. They need the school open by September. Can you use a different concrete supplier?" "Not for the replacement. The insurance liability requires Archer to do the remediation. It's in the contract." I made sympathetic noises while internally calculating the damage. The school project had been on schedule, the one bright spot in Geraldson's portfolio. Now it was about to become another bleeding wound. The board meeting that week was brutal. I listened through the heating vents while Gerald and the board tried to process the disaster. "How does this happen?" Gerald demanded. "Archer's been reliable for decades. Now suddenly they have quality control problems?" "It's their insurance company," the project manager explained. "New carrier, new protocols. They're being extremely aggressive about liability. This is going to cost us a fortune. And the timeline, the school district has a hard end. If we're not done by August, they assess penalties. We're aware. Then fix it. I don't care what it takes. Work around the clock. Hire additional crews. Just get it done. But it couldn't be fixed quickly. Removing concrete required heavy equipment, careful demolition, disposal of tons of material. Then fresh pours, curing time, inspections. The delays cascaded like dominoes. 2 weeks became 4. 4 became 6. The penalties started accumulating on the school project too. Now Geraldson Construction had 2 failing projects. The highway project bleeding money through winter delays. The school project hemorrhaging cash from concrete replacement. The company's cash reserves were draining fast. Gerald took out the bridge loan in February. $3 million from Commerce Bank at harsh terms. 8% interest, strict covenants, personal guarantees from Gerald and the board members. It was a desperate move, a sign of weakness. And it made the company vulnerable in exactly the way Rebecca and I needed. I met Peter Shaw in March. Rebecca arranged it, calling me on a Tuesday evening while Camilla was at a board meeting. Shaw wants to meet you. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., his office. Why? Because you're the source. He wants to evaluate you personally before committing resources. Shaw and Associates had offices in the Willis Tower, 68th floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, sleek modern furniture, everything designed to project power and success. Peter Shaw was in his early 50s, gray at the temples, expensive suit that probably cost more than I made in a month. He had the look of a predator, calm, confident, always calculating. "Mr. Donovan," he said, shaking my hand. His grip was firm, professional. "Rebecca speaks highly of you. I appreciate the meeting. Please, sit." He gestured to a leather chair facing his desk. "Can I offer you anything? Coffee? Water?" "I'm fine, thank you." He sat behind his desk, steepling his fingers. "Rebecca tells me you have a personal interest in Geraldson Construction's downfall." "I do." "Care to explain why?" I could have lied, created some business justification. But Shaw was too smart for that. "My wife cheated on me with my brother. He works for Geraldson, she's Gerald's daughter. I want them all to lose everything." Shaw smiled. Not a nice smile, but appreciative. "Honest. I respect that." He pulled up a file on his computer. "I've reviewed the information you've provided through Rebecca. Very thorough, very useful." "Is it enough to justify our interest?" "Absolutely. Geraldson Construction is in trouble. 2 major projects failing, cash reserves depleted, bridge loan with harsh terms. They're vulnerable." "So you'll move forward?" "That depends on several factors. First, can you continue providing inside information?" "Yes." "How long can you maintain your position?" "As long as necessary. My wife believes we're reconciling. She has no reason to suspect me." "And you're comfortable with this? Destroying your wife's family business?" "Completely." Shaw studied me for a long moment. "Most people couldn't do what you're doing. They'd feel guilty, conflicted. They'd rationalize or compromise. But you're different." "I'm patient." "You're cold," Shaw corrected. "That's not a criticism. In business, cold is useful. Cold makes good decisions." He pulled up another document, turned his monitor so I could see. "Here's what we're proposing. We approach Gerald in May or June, when his cash flow situation is critical. We offer investment capital, $5 million to cover project losses and provide operational cushion. In exchange for what? Equity, board seats, operational control." He smiled. "We'll structure it so the family thinks they're getting rescued. Gerald retains nominal ownership, but we control decisions. And then? Then we restructure. Cut costs, renegotiate contracts, streamline operations. If the company can be saved profitably, we save it. If not," he shrugged, "we liquidate assets and recover our investment plus return." "What happens to the employees?" "The family? Employees who are useful, stay. Everyone else goes. As for the family..." Shaw looked at me directly. "Your brother will be terminated immediately. Your wife's equity will be diluted to near worthlessness. Gerald will watch everything he built dismantled. Is that what you want?" "Yes." "Then we have an understanding." Shaw extended his hand again. "Continue providing information through Rebecca. We'll handle the rest." I shook his hand, sealing the deal. I'd just agreed to help vulture capitalists destroy a 40-year-old family business, and I felt nothing except cold satisfaction. Spring arrived cold and wet. The highway project resumed in March, but the weather was terrible. Rain, then snow, then more rain. The ground was mud. Equipment got stuck. Workers couldn't work safely. Jimmy pushed them anyway. He was desperate, under enormous pressure from Gerald and the board. He cut safety protocols, demanded extended hours, screamed at project managers who complained about conditions. It was exactly the wrong approach. OSHA showed up in early April after an anonymous complaint. They found violations: inadequate safety equipment, workers on scaffolding in high winds, electrical work in wet conditions. They shut down the site for 3 days and issued $60,000 in fines. I hadn't called OSHA. Rebecca had connections there too. The highway project missed its April 15th end by 17 days. The penalties totaled $670,000, almost $750,000 in pure losses. The school project wasn't doing much better. The concrete replacement had taken longer than expected. Now they were racing to finish before the August end, but the timeline was tight, too tight. Gerald called another board meeting in late April. The atmosphere was funereal. "Our cash position is critical," the CFO reported. "We've burned through the bridge loan. We're current on vendor payments, but barely. The bonding company has reduced our capacity by 40%. We can't bid on any new major projects." "What are our options?" Gerald asked. His voice was tired. "We need capital, significant capital, either another loan or outside investment. Banks won't touch us. Not with our current position. Then we need investors." Silence around the table. "I've been approached," Gerald finally said. "A private equity firm, Shaw and Associates. They're offering $5 million in investment capital." "What do they want?" "Equity, board seats, operational oversight." "That's a takeover." "That's survival," Gerald said, echoing his words from months before. "Without capital, we fold. The bank will call the bridge loan, vendors will demand COD, our bonding company will drop us completely. We'll be out of business by summer." More silence. "I want to avoid this," Gerald continued, "but I don't see alternatives. Unless someone has a better solution." No one did. "Then we negotiate with Shaw. See what terms we can get. Maybe we can structure it to maintain family control." But they couldn't. Shaw and Associates didn't negotiate from weakness. They dictated terms. The deal closed in June. Shaw invested $5 million in exchange for 60% equity and 3 board seats. Gerald retained 20%. The remaining 20% was distributed among existing shareholders, including Camilla. Her shares, which had been worth nearly $3 million a year ago, were now worth about $400,000. Still significant, but not the inheritance she'd been counting on. And Shaw's people moved in immediately. Shaw and Associates didn't waste time. Within a week of closing the deal, they had their people in Geraldson's offices, conducting comprehensive audits of every project, every employee, every decision. They were efficient, thorough, and ruthless. I watched it happen through Camilla. She came home each evening looking more shell-shocked, describing the systematic dismantling of her father's company. "They're reviewing everything," she said one night over dinner. "Every contract, every expense, every employee. They're looking for cuts." "That's what restructuring firms do," I said, playing the sympathetic husband. "They optimize operations. They're destroying it. My father built this company over 40 years. These people have been here 2 weeks and they think they know better. Maybe they do know better. The company was failing, Camilla. Your father couldn't fix it alone." She glared at me. "Whose side are you on?" "I'm not on anyone's side. I'm just being realistic." "Well, your realism isn't helpful." I let it drop. But inside, I was celebrating. Shaw's people were doing exactly what I'd hoped, cutting deep, exposing weaknesses, eliminating weight, and their first major cut was Jimmy. He lasted 2 weeks under Shaw's audit. They documented everything: his poor decisions on the highway project, the corner cutting, the lies to the board about project status, the OSHA violations. They calculated the cost of his failures: nearly $2 million in penalties, overruns, and lost opportunities. Then they fired him. No ceremony, no farewell party. Just security escorting him out with a box of personal items and 2 weeks' severance. I heard about it at Sunday dinner, or what was now considered Sunday dinner, a tradition that was disappearing along with everything else. Gerald looked defeated. Martha looked lost. Camilla was quiet, withdrawn, and Jimmy showed up drunk. He stumbled in around 6:30, Stephanie notably absent. His shirt was untucked, his tie missing entirely. He reeked of whiskey. "Well, well," he slurred, dropping into a chair, "the weekly gathering of the fallen Geraldson empire." "James," Martha said quietly, "please. Please what? Please pretend everything's fine. Please act like Shaw and Associates didn't just destroy 40 years of work." He laughed, ugly and bitter. "They fired me. Did you know that, Dad? Your son, escorted out by security like a criminal." "You cost the company millions," Gerald said quietly. "What did you expect? I worked my ass off on those projects. I did everything. You lied to the board. You cut corners. You made decision after decision that prioritized your ego over the company's success. That's not fair." "It's completely fair," Gerald interrupted, and his voice was hard suddenly. "You thought you were untouchable, the golden boy. But you're not. You never were. You were just lucky, and when your luck ran out, you had nothing to fall back on." Jimmy's face went red. "This is your fault. You let Shaw in. You gave them control. I saved what I could, which is more than you did." "Saved what? The company name? The office building? It's all gone, Dad. Everything you built, everything that mattered. Shaw is going to strip it apart and sell it for scrap." "Then at least we'll get something," Gerald said. "Better than bankruptcy, which is where we were heading under your management." Jimmy stood abruptly, knocking over his water glass. "This family is finished. You're all finished." He pointed at Camilla. "Your trust fund's not going to last forever, sis. Better start looking for a real job." Then he turned to me. "And you," he said, his voice dripping contempt. "You're loving this, aren't you? Finally getting to see the Geraldson family brought down to your level." I met his eyes, kept my voice calm. "I don't know what you mean." "Sure you don't. Good old reliable David, background noise, too boring to notice." He laughed again. "Must be nice being invisible. Nobody expects anything from you." "James, that's enough," Martha said. "It's never enough," Jimmy said, but he staggered toward the door. "I'm done with all of you." We listened to his car start outside. Listened to the tires squeal as he drove away, probably too drunk to be behind the wheel. Nobody spoke for a long moment. Then Gerald said quietly, "I never thought it would end like this." Jimmy's life collapsed completely after that night. Stephanie filed for divorce within a week, citing his drinking, his anger, his failures. She took the kids and the house. Jimmy moved into a cheap apartment in Schaumburg, started job hunting. But his reputation was destroyed. The construction industry in Chicago isn't large. Word travels. Everyone knew about the Geraldson Highway project disaster, the OSHA violations, the massive penalties. No one wanted to hire the VP who'd lost his company $2 million. He applied to firms in other cities, Milwaukee, Indianapolis, St. Louis. But they all checked references, all heard the same story. By July, Jimmy was working at a hardware store. 38 years old, business degree from Northwestern, former VP of a major construction company, now making $15 an hour selling power tools. The golden boy had fallen. Meanwhile, Shaw and Associates continued their systematic destruction of Geraldson Construction. They renegotiated contracts, laid off employees, sold equipment and vehicles. They completed the highway project and the school project, barely, both significantly over budget, then declined to bid on any new work. The company was being hollowed out, prepared for liquidation. Gerald watched it happen, powerless to stop it. He still nominally owned 20%, still sat on the board, but Shaw's people controlled every decision. He was a figurehead, a ghost haunting the ruins of his empire. Martha stopped hosting Sunday dinners. The tradition died quietly, like everything else. Camilla grew distant, withdrawn. She spent more time at her parents' house, trying to support them. She spent less time with me. Our conversations became perfunctory. The marriage that had been damaged by her affair was now completely hollow. I didn't mind. I was busy preparing for the final act. I filed for divorce in late July. I'd been planning it for months, working with a different lawyer than Rebecca, someone specializing in family law, someone aggressive and thorough. We'd prepared everything in advance: documentation of adultery, financial records showing I'd been the primary earner, property records showing the house was my separate property, inherited before marriage. The divorce papers were perfect, comprehensive, devastating. I left them on the kitchen table on a Tuesday morning. The same day of the week I'd discovered the affair, exactly 1 year later. The symmetry pleased me. Camilla came home around 6 p.m. I was waiting in the living room, a glass of whiskey in my hand. Not because I needed the courage, I didn't, but because the moment felt like it deserved ceremony. She dropped her purse by the door, started toward the kitchen, then stopped. I heard papers rustling. Then silence. "David?" Her voice was uncertain. "In here." She appeared in the doorway, papers trembling in her hands. Her face was pale. "What is this?" "Divorce papers." I thought that was obvious. "But we've been working through things. We haven't been working through anything," I interrupted. "I've been pretending. For the last year, every day, I've been playing the role of the forgiving husband while I planned your family's destruction." She stared at me like I was speaking a foreign language. "What are you talking about?" I pulled out my phone, opened a folder, started scrolling through documents. Midwestern Electric losing their credit line. That was me. Well, Rebecca and I. She has contacts at Prairie State Bank. We suggested they might want to reassess their risk. Camilla's mouth opened slightly. No words came out. "The concrete problem on the school project?" "Also us. Rebecca has connections at insurance companies. Easy enough to trigger a review to create liability concerns." I smiled. "The OSHA complaint that shut down the highway project for 3 days? That one's my favorite. Completely anonymous, completely legal, and it cost you $670,000 in additional penalties. That's impossible. You're an accountant. You don't have the knowledge, the connections, the capability." I laughed. "Camilla, I'm very good with numbers, and I found people who are very good with corporate destruction. Rebecca Ortiz, in case you're wondering. Remember her? We worked together years ago. She's a partner now at a corporate law firm. Specializes in hostile takeovers and asset restructuring. This is insane. And Shaw and Associates? The vulture capitalists who destroyed your father's company? They came to the table because I gave them everything they needed. Project documents, financial reports, internal memos, every mistake Jimmy made, every vulnerability in the company. I photographed it all from your home office and fed it to them piece by piece." Camilla sank into a chair. Her face had gone from pale to gray. "Why?" "Because you fucked my brother in our bed, because your whole family treated me like furniture, because you thought I didn't matter enough to hide your betrayal." I leaned forward. "You had him here, Camilla. In the middle of a Tuesday afternoon, in our bed, because you were absolutely certain I was too stupid, too boring, too irrelevant to come home early. I'm sorry." "You're not sorry. You're caught." I stood, walked to the window. 9 years, Camilla. 9 years I played the supporting role in your life. The dependable husband who funded your lifestyle while you collected your inheritance and fucked my brother on Tuesday afternoons. This is insane revenge for an affair. It's not about the affair. I turned back to her and I let her see the coldness in my eyes. It's about respect. About being treated like a human being instead of a prop. You want to know the worst part? It wasn't that you cheated. People cheat. It happens. It was that you were so careless about it. So confident I'd never notice or never care, like I was too insignificant to matter. Tears were streaming down her face now. What did you do? What did you actually do? I destroyed your family's company. I got your brother fired and blacklisted. I made your father watch 40 years of work get dismantled by corporate vultures. I turned your $3 million inheritance into $400,000. I smiled. And now I'm divorcing you and taking everything I'm legally entitled to. The house, the cars, half the liquid assets. Your trust fund is yours. What's left of it after you've been supporting your parents. My father will fight you. Your father is a broken 70-year-old man trying to salvage his dignity from bankruptcy. He doesn't have the energy, the money, or the leverage to fight me, and his lawyers are busy trying to negotiate with Shaw's restructuring team. Camilla was sobbing now, huge gasping sobs that shook her whole body. How could you do this? How could you be so cruel? Cruel? I considered that. Maybe. But effective. And patient. And thorough. Everything an accountant should be. You're a monster. No, I corrected. I'm the same person I've always been. I just stopped letting people underestimate me. I walked past her toward the stairs. I'll be staying at a hotel. My lawyer will contact yours. Don't try to call me. David, please. I stopped on the stairs, looked back at her. She was crumpled in the chair, mascara streaming down her face, the divorce papers scattered around her feet. She looked broken, destroyed. I felt nothing. One more thing, I said. Jimmy knows it was me. I made sure he got a detailed memo from Shaw's audit team showing all the information sources they used. He knows every document, every memo, every internal report came from your home office. He knows I gave them everything. Why would you tell him that? So he knows exactly who destroyed him. So when he goes to sleep in his cheap apartment, working his $15 an hour job, supporting his ex-wife and kids on poverty wages, he knows that the boring accountant did this to him. I smiled. I want him to understand that the person he dismissed, the background character he fucked over without a second thought, had the power to end his entire life. You really are a monster. If that's what it takes to be seen, then yes. I'm a monster. I left her crying in the living room and went upstairs to pack my things.